So, what I'm going to share with you is not just one idea here and there. This is what major research is showing us how we can prevent dementia. And medicine is changing. In the past, medicine was a very linear paradigm. You have diagnosis, you have treatment, and then the patient was supposed to get better. But it doesn't work like that. We're different. You know, we have different cultural backgrounds, we have different educational backgrounds, we have different genetics, we have different habits. So we have a new concept by the name of personalized medicine, in which you customize the treatment according to the person. And that's what we did with this depression program. As you can see, you can arrive at depression through many roads. It's not just one road that will lead you to depression. So you can have, genetic, nutrition, toxic, and frontal lobe, you'll have depression. But at the same time, you can have social, circadian, lifestyle, and developmental. That'll take you also to depression. Same destination, different roads. So if you want to get Alzheimer's disease, let me tell you what you're going to do. Make sure that you eat plenty of sugar and meat. Make sure your sleep is not good. Don't you do any exercise. Get rid of important hormones in males, testosterone, in females, estradiol. Make sure your vitamin D is nice and low, and I guarantee you're going to have type 2 Alzheimer's disease. Statistics tell us that 1 in 20 of the age of 60 will have a diagnosis of dementia. 1 in 5 of people over 80 will have a diagnosis of dementia. As you age, your risk starts to increase. And this is some of the projections that we see regarding diseases in the near future. Notice how many diseases we're seeing a positive potential outcome, but what are we expecting regarding dementia? It's gonna keep on going up and up and up. So by 2050, we expect dementia numbers to increase from 35 million to 115 million. So I'm very happy you're here tonight, because as you become aware what are some of those risk factors, you can start making changes and avoid being part of this statistic. And you can see here something worrisome, if you can see in this map, is that France is not among the low dementia cases. It's in the second place, there regarding the risk for dementia. So France is 64 there on the list there of the risk for dementia. And I'm going to be using the term Alzheimer's and dementia interchangeable. Dementia is the umbrella term. There's many different types of dementia. But it happens to be that the most common dementia that we see here in France and in Switzerland happens to be Alzheimer's dementia. Another very common type of dementia is the vascular dementia, in which the blood vessels that go to the brain start to get atherosclerosis due to the high consumption of animal products and stress, and that creates micro strokes, and that's what increases that risk of dementia. So a common question that I get is, what's the difference between normal aging and dementia? Normal aging is normal for your brain to slow down a little bit, but your intelligence shouldn't change. In other words, if you as a kid were very smart, as you keep getting older and older, you'll still be very smart. But I have bad news for you. If you were not very bright when you were young, the story will continue ahead. So they describe the brain of Alzheimer's as a tree that is losing its leaves. AD means Alzheimer's dementia. Look at what happens when somebody has dementia. So dementia, we focus at the decline of the processing information as well as changes in personality and behavior. And we measure different things through different instruments like the Montreal test to make this diagnosis of dementia. And we're going to be measuring your ability to incorporate new information and to recall that information. We're going to check different aspects of your brain, such as your motor abilities, your ability to speak and find the right words and understand, recognition of things and people, and your frontal lobe function, your executive function. And the sad thing is that if you don't stop at the beginning this is going to continue getting worse and worse and worse. And we're going to pass by 3 stages. First, the first stage is in which the person speaking and they cannot find the right words. Or they're telling you a story and they forgot that they just told you the story. So they tell it to you again and again and again and again and so forth. The people around them starts noticing, something is not right, with my relative and so forth. If we don't stop this here, this is going to become moderate. And this one is when you start seeing, the sad part of the disease. Even the relatives, the person doesn't recognize them, They cannot know, where they are, what time it is, and so forth. And the sad part of the dementia, in which the person is completely dependent on others. They won't eat. If you put the plate of food, they won't eat. You have to feed them in the mouth. They don't recognize anybody. Sometimes they're just shouting, completely lost. So if you bring me somebody with severe type of dementia and tell me, doctor, please do something for, my father, I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do for your father. But who I want to speak to is the son. That one I want to speak to. Because the son can learn some of these triggers of the dementia and can start making changes to avoid being in that severe type of dementia later in the future. So as I tell my patients, dementia is like a boat. All of us are born with a boat. How good the material of your boat is depends on your genes, what you inherit from your parents. But how do you treat your boat? What habits do you have? It's what's going to determine how long your boat is going to last. So in your 30s and 40s, what diet are you following? Are you doing exercise? How is your stress level? Are you prioritizing sleep? Are you letting insulin resistance come on board? Are you not controlling your blood pressure? If you're not controlling these things, you're harming tremendously your boat. And by the time you reach your 50s, the boat is starting to show cracks. Okay? And those cracks are called those amyloid proteins. And if we don't correct the inflammation, if we don't correct the vascular problems, the atherosclerosis, the cholesterol issues, if we don't correct the oxygen-free radicals, I'm telling you, you're going to be in big trouble, because by the time you reach 60s, water is starting to come in on your boat. And depending how severe the problem is, you may try to remove as much water as possible, but sometimes it's too much water coming in. That boat, it will be sinking early in life. Kan du bring med noen vann, vær så snill? Oh, there no. Tak. So there's a gene for Alzheimer's. Some of you may have heard about them. It's called the APOE4. Did you know what this gene is about? This gene is about inflammation. How many of you were in the lecture of inflammation? Few people, you missed a very, very important lecture. So inflammation, the gene triggers inflammation. So if you have this gene, small mistakes in your lifestyle will be translated into severe inflammation, much higher than the average person. That's why they get themselves in really big trouble if you have that. But that doesn't mean that if you have it, you have to have dementia. Let me show you some of the statistics. Here it is, your risk of carrying this gene. So if you're European, about 24%, 26%. So 1 out of 4 people, if you're European, will carry that. Highest risk factor, African Americans, 34%. If you're from African origin, the studies from America, that's why they call them African Americans, but if you're African origin, your risk is 34%. Again, it doesn't mean you're going to have dementia. There's multiple things involved. Look at this. This is a good article from journal Lancet. And it's documenting how it increases by 7% your risk of dementia. Okay? There's other factors, less education. So if you didn't have a chance to have much education, what are you going to do? You need to study. It's never too late to challenge your brain. You can be 60, you can be 80, and you can challenge your brain. Hearing loss is a big deal, 9% increase of risk. Hypertension 2%, obesity 1%, smoking 5%, depression 4%, physical activity 3%, social isolation 2%, diabetes 1%. So as you can see, it's multiple pathways that are going to take you to dementia. Now, notice this fascinating graphic. One on your right side, you can see the artery, the main artery of the body called the aorta. Some people, as they age, that's the way the artery is going to look. Some people, exactly at the same age, their artery is going to look like the left. Question, what made the difference? Is it luck that makes the difference? The choices that we are taking will determine if we're going to go on that direction or if we're going to go on this direction. Same thing with the cells in your body that create and make your bones strong, and the cells in your body that make your bones weak. Some people stimulate the cells of their body that destroy their bone. Well, at the same time, there's people that stimulate the cells that build bone. So how come some people have osteoporosis and some don't? What made the difference? Is it luck? Not necessarily. The choices that you're taking, how's your vitamin D? Are you eating excess protein that weakens up your bones very badly? Are you not doing enough exercise? Are you under a lot of stress? Are you not doing exercise that challenge your bones? Those are the things that are going to be weakening your bones. So, in the same way, our brain has some fascinating processes. It has a process that builds connections in your brain, which is good. At the same time, your brain has processes that destroy the connections in your brain. And this happened through a mechanism called the APP pathway. And guess what stimulates that APP? Inflammation. Inflammation is what stimulates the destruction of those connections in your brain. So this is key to what we're going to be talking about today. Remember the depression program that I show you? We have 10 potential roads that leads you to depression. In Alzheimer's disease, we can classify things in 4 types. Let me explain to you briefly each one of them. So you have the inflammatory or infectious. This one, you're exposing yourself to certain pathogens, certain germs, especially through your nose. See, there's a nerve that goes from your brain to your nose, and germs can climb that brain and start causing inflammation in your brain. So we need to be careful about the health of our nose. 2, atrophic. It means you don't have the right things for your brain to function properly, especially hormones. Males with low testosterone, females with hormones that are too much out of control, a thyroid hormone not under control, a brain that is not being nourished by nutrition properly. Those things increase that risk of type 2 dementia. If you can see, it's the same disease, but we're arriving through different roads. Then we have the 1.5 glycotoxic, and that has to do with insulin resistance. In fact, I just put a study a week ago on my Twitter showing that exercise is one of the best ways to decrease insulin resistance in the brain. That's why another of the reasons why we need to have that regular exercise program. And then you have toxins. Toxins, certain toxins like mercury, like lead, and many others, as they come in contact with you, they go to your nerve cells and start affecting them. As I mentioned to you, the body has a hard time removing the mercury in your body. So the least amount of mercury that you can expose, the better. And then finally, you have type 4, which are both 2 type 4s. And the reason being is because type 4 vascular has to do with the blood vessels that nurture the brain. As I mentioned to you, when there is atherosclerosis, those blood vessels close, not enough blood is arriving to the brain. That's really, really dangerous for your brain cells because they're very hungry for good nutrition and oxygen. Or you can get the same results to traumatic injuries of your brain. So what happens? The brain is floating inside your skull. So when you have a very big hit on your head, your brain bounces inside your skull. You think that's good? No, you injure blood vessels when you do that. Very interesting study. If you go to my Twitter about 4 months ago, I put it there. It was documenting that playing soccer increases your risk of dementia because of you use your head to hit the ball. The only one that didn't have the risk was the goalkeeper. That one doesn't hit, the ball with the head. Let me show you this interesting clinical case. 67-year-old patient with dementia, had family that already had dementia, and she's reading something. By the time she reaches the end of the page, she forgets what she's reading about. That's not good. She has lived in the same home for a long time. She cannot find her home. She needs to use GPS to arrive to her place. So what she did, she identifies the causes of her dementia and start working at reversing them. We'll go briefly through some of those causes in a minute. What happened to her? Within months, she started noticing that her memory was improving dramatically. Not only that, she was able to continue working as an executive secretary. You know, you need to be learning the telephone numbers and the appointments and all these little details. She was able to keep up very well. But then she got a very severe stomach flu, and she got off the program. Started compromising in her diet, started taking caffeine and alcohol, stopped her exercise, and so forth. And after a few weeks, she started noticing that the memory problems started to come back. That scared her enough that she went back to the healthy lifestyle, and by the time they published the paper, she is completely dementia-free. So can you see the impact that this can have? You can stop this process at the beginning. But once this thing starts going and you didn't stop it, you're going to be in really big trouble. So this is the way that I like to explain this to my patients. Dementia is like a roof that has 36 holes. Imagine if your roof had 36 holes. Okay? What do you need to do? You need to close as many of those holes as possible. Let me tell you the following thing that I have observed. I have noticed that some people try to close some of the holes, but they leave many of the holes open. Do you think that's good? No, because you're increasing the risk. For example, you know, because I'm a very frequent flyer, many times they put me in business class there in the front of the plane. So I'm there, you know, in the front of the plane, and I'm observing around, and I see this man close by me. I think he must be worried about dementia because he's doing all these crosswords and Sudoku and so forth, which I'm not against those things. If you want to do it, go for it. You know, there's some way to stimulate your brain. But please notice what he does. When the beverage cart comes and they're offering, you know, what you want to drink, what's his choice? Wine. Wrong thing to take if you want to prevent dementia. It is extremely inflammatory. It damages your brain cells. That's the last thing you want to drink, you know, if you want to protect your brain. And then the meal cart comes and they're offering the meal to the passengers. What is his choice? Chicken. Wrong choice. That is not a good choice if you want to keep inflammation low in your body. And then, you know, the flight is progressing. We're in business class, which is super nice because you press a button and your seat becomes a bed. So it's late, so I put my seat back and I, you know, start to catch some sleep. And then I wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I'm seeing him. He's just wasting his time watching movies, you know, the whole time. That's the wrong thing to do. You need to at least try to get some sleep, because at night is when your body is regenerating. So can you see what's the problem here? Here he is trying to close one of the holes, but what about the rest of the holes? It doesn't work unless you are honest, identify as many of those holes, and work at closing them. So let's go briefly through each one of those factors. So number one, you need to optimize your diet. What do you need? You need a whole food, plant-based diet. And let me make this clear for the French. Many times I notice the French are very confused about this subject, about the Mediterranean diet. Did you know that the Mediterranean diet was documented for the first time by Dr. Ansel Keys from Minnesota University? And he came here to Europe immediately after Second World War. How was France after Second World War? Man, it was so rich, isn't it, and prosperous and so forth. They were broke, from the war. So what they were eating was very simple food. It was the food that they were planting in their own gardens, because even the inflation and devaluation of their money, they couldn't even afford, to go to a store to buy their regular foods. So it was a plant-based diet. That is the Mediterranean diet. Today, the Mediterranean diet is too rich. They have added too many things, and it is not the same Mediterranean diet from those old days. So we need that wholesome diet. And then all the time I get patients that try to negotiate with me. Well, doctor, what about if I eat chicken once a week and so forth? It doesn't work. It's too much cholesterol, too much saturated fat, too much oxidation that you are causing in your body. And believe me, you're going to harm the arteries of your body by doing that. And for those that came, throughout the week, we were sharing this study. This is a patient of ours, how he was diabetic, he was hypertensive, he had a severe problem with obesity, and that diet and that healthy lifestyle help this patient reverse every single one of those conditions, and you see him a year and a half. Good news or bad news? Good news. This is what we want to experience in our lives. Look at this one. Eating leafy greens every day is linked to sharper memory. And this one, your cholesterol level predicts your risk of dementia. That's why I want to keep that cholesterol the lowest possible. This one, eating healthy reduces cognitive decline. Wrong habits of eating not only hurt your brain, not only hurt your waistline, they hurt your brain. Watch out what you are eating. And all the time I get this question, doctor, what about the coconut oil? Beware of the people that are trying to sell you this thing. This stuff is not the best for you. Our answer is no. It has saturated fat, and it will increase the bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol, which is the cholesterol that damages your arteries. So it is not a good idea to be eating this on a regular basis. If once in a while you want to make some, dessert and use some of it, go for it, But on a regular basis is a no. Top 10 foods that we need to be avoiding. Processed foods, processed meats, red meat, chicken. America is the #1 source of cholesterol. Butter and margarine, fried foods and fast foods, cheese, pastries and sweets, sugary drinks, and alcohol. Those are not the best foods for your brain. What else can we do? Switch to a 2 meals a day program. So you eat nice big breakfast in the morning, and then you wait at least 6 hours or more, and then you eat your second meal, and then after eating that second meal, nothing, all the way until breakfast. Here's another mistake that the French do. How do you call the breakfast? Petite. We need to change that into gros. It needs to be the biggest meal of the day. Okay? On this one, that's not a good idea. Why do we do that? We do that because of this. See, by that fasting, that is what repairs the nerve cells of your brain. If you don't repair the DNA of the nerve cells, the nerve cell is going to die and you will lose some neurons. So by switching to that 2 meals a day, things are going to work much better. I've been following that plan since 1997, and I love it. I mean, just yesterday, I ate only 2 times yesterday, and I woke up in the morning, climbed the whole thing without eating anything, and then came back, and then I ate my breakfast. You still are going to have plenty of energy. Make sure you're sleeping enough. 8 hours should be the goal. And make sure you increase your exercise. Make sure you expose yourself to bright light early in the morning. Make sure you're regular. This is the way that we're going to help improve the sleep. Loss of REM sleep tied to greater risk of dementia. Finish your sleep, else your brain begins to eat itself. It self-cannibalizes your brain when you're not sleeping enough. Regularly getting less than 6 hours of sleep a night could cause the same long-term damage as alcohol abuse. So is sleeping enough important? Extremely important. You need to be logging in at least 7 hours a night. Make sure you're doing your regular exercise from 30 to 60 minutes per day, 4 to 6 days a week. Exercise keeps dementia at bay. Make sure you stimulate your brain. Not only with Sudoku and crossword, you can do that, but challenge it really, For example, Proverbs, fabulous book to stimulate your brain. Prophecy, excellent way to stimulate your brain as you are imagining the symbols and so forth. That is good for your mind to challenge your brain like that. Learn new languages, okay? That is good for your brain to learn new languages. These are some labs that you can run. Homocysteine, I want that homocysteine less than 7. Higher than 7, it means there's damage to the arteries of the brain. Make sure your vitamin B12 is nice and high. So I want that vitamin B12 to be at least 500. If you're going to switch to the whole food plant-based diet, you may need some supplement once or twice a week. Make sure that you add that to your daily routine. This one, the C-reactive protein, is a measure of inflammation. I want that to be less than 1. And hemoglobin A1C, a marker of insulin resistance, I want this for 5.5. Make sure your hormones are under control. I've seen this very often. People that have problems, definite diagnosed problems with their thyroid, and they're refusing to take their medication. I'm telling you, this is extremely dangerous. You go to the internet and start reading, all kinds of wrong information. If you don't correct that thyroid correctly, I can guarantee you're going to end up with dementia. So make sure those hormones are under control. Males, testosterone, you need to work it out so that it's nice and high, your testosterone. And females, by having a good lifestyle, as you transition into menopause, the effect of the menopause is lessened. Make sure you have social support. I don't like that Zoom church. It doesn't work that well. You need the contact of human beings. You need to be around human beings. That is where you are going to get the most benefit as you contact and interact with others. That social support is extremely important. I'm not going to have time to talk about that this weekend, but I'm telling you, this is a super important factor for disease. Somebody that is socially isolated has the same risk of dementia as somebody severely obese. That's how big social isolation problem is. Next one, make sure you reduce your stress. By prayer, by Bible study, by forgiveness, by connection. Make sure you are reducing your levels of stress. Make sure your GI tract has the good type of microbes. How are you going to achieve that? By eating at least 40 grams of fiber a day. Okay? 40 grams of fiber a day. Make sure your vitamin D is between 50 and 70. If you live here, you need some supplement of vitamin D in the winter. The sun doesn't have enough intensity to generate that. If you want to move to Marcel, in the south, there are plenty of sunlight there. But here in the north, it's too low. In fact, use the guideline that the Norwegians use. The Norwegian guideline is the following. If the month has the letter R, you need vitamin D. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Excellent guideline of when to take your vitamin D. Avoid caffeine. I show you in the previous lecture that decrease of blood flow to the brain. You think that's good for you? No, you need the most blood flow possible in your brain. As a general rule, if something is addictive, it's not good for you. As simple as that. I never seen somebody addicted to carrots. Carrots are not addictive. Okay? Look at this study. This poor spider, they took her as the subject of the research, and then they took caffeine and they adjusted the caffeine to the size of the spider. They put the spider to do its normal spider web, and then they injected this poor spider with that caffeine of 2 cups of coffee adjusted to the size of the spider. And then they put the spider to do its spider web. This is what it made. After 48 hours, it made this. It took 96 hours for the caffeine effect to go away. I'm telling you that caffeine is not good for you. If you go to my YouTube page, I just put a video about caffeine. I talk about deeply there. Go on and find it on my YouTube page, that clip of caffeine that I just put there literally a couple of days ago. Make sure you're eating plenty of antioxidants, not as pills, by having a variety of fruits and vegetables. And as I mentioned to you, avoid alcohol. Look at this one. This is a fascinating study documenting very clearly here in France, the more alcohol you take, the more your risk of dementia. I'm telling you, this stuff is not good for you. I know they drink here as if it's the water of everybody, but that's not good. That's what the researchers are pinpointing to the increase of dementia. Look at this study. You find this in my Twitter account. The largest study of its kind finds that alcohol use is the biggest risk factor for dementia. And where was this study done? You're standing here in France, okay? In France, the biggest factor for dementia is the use of alcohol. So not because everybody's doing it, it means that it's the most healthy thing. That is what the marketing department of the alcohol industry wants you to believe, but the reality is otherwise. All the time, they're bringing studies showing how harmful alcohol is, but you don't hear about those studies in the press. Follow my Twitter, I put them there all the time. Almost every week I have a study there documenting harms that alcohol causes. Make sure you're eating enough zinc and copper. Where are you going to eat this? In nuts and legumes. Make sure that you don't have sleep apnea. How do you know if you have sleep apnea? Ask your partner. if you are, if you are, snoring, and then suddenly you stop, and then you don't hear any noise until after a few seconds. That's not good. That is not good. That causes tremendous inflammation in your body. You need to lose weight. That's the number one reason why of sleep apnea. Fat accumulates here in this part of the neck, and you collapse your airways, and that's what causes many of the cases of sleep apnea. Associated sleep disorders with breathing, they are associated with cognitive decline. Avoid heavy metals like mercury, lead, cadmium, and so forth. This is my study. You find it there on my research gate. We were finding that depression actually increases with the consumption of fish, contrary to what they tell you, And our theory is because you're exposing yourself to heavy metals. And I cite a fascinating study. Is this study, number one? Go to my research gate. You can find the details of the study. That study says that today every fish has mercury. It's impossible to find mercury-free fish today, sadly, because we have polluted our lakes, our rivers, our oceans. So, as you can see, the name of the game is to identify these causes and start reversing them. I'm in the process of producing this program. It's like the depression program, but for dementia. We just finished filming the whole thing, and we're going to be working at reversing those factors. So as soon as possible, deal with inflammation, oxidation, your lipid profile, and insulin resistance. So last clinical case. 74-year-old attorney. He had problems with his memory. He was having problems when he was speaking, finding the right words to say. His mother had diagnosis of dementia. When they check his genes, he has the gene of dementia and inflammation. They try the usual medications. It doesn't work. So what he did, he identified the holes in his roof and started making those lifestyle changes. And in 6 months after, no diagnosis of dementia whatsoever. But then he had a long trip that he had to do, to a business trip. And as he went on his trip, he got off the exercise. He started using alcohol. He started using caffeine. His sleep was not very good, and so forth. His diet was horrible. And suddenly, after a few weeks, the problems of his memory started to return. That scared him off enough to go back to the good lifestyle. And by the time that they published the clinical case years later, no dementia diagnosis whatsoever. So as you can see, there is a lot that we can do to prevent dementia, and we need to start as soon as possible. Don't think, next year I'll start. ASAP, you need to start making those changes. And just as a reminder, I'm going to leave all these books here with Cecilia. So I have this blueprint for revival, the one we were talking about yesterday. How with the help of God we helped to revive a church from 14 members to 130 members. It's also available in Spanish for those that want the Spanish version. There's a very few of these ones. There's this book for depression for children. It's called I Have the Blues, What Should I Do? There's this book on immunity about I have the flu, what should I do? It's available in Spanish. It's available in Ukrainian. And there's also the Pandemic Busters in Swahili. There's a few of those copies, and as well as the Pandemic Busters in English. So most of the things that we're talking about, they're all here in this book. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll continue the program tomorrow. Things are going a little bit late, for questions and so forth. So tomorrow we'll deal with some of the questions, if you have some questions, and come back and continue to learn. I'm not here every day, so take advantage of the fact that I am here. Thank you very much.